Kevin, we have breaking news. Kyrie Irving is picking up his $36.5 million player option to remain with the Nets. He tells The Athletic LA, the Lakers, had been the one team known to be interested in a sign and trade. With a very talented point guard, Irving had until Wednesday to opt into that final year of his contract with Brooklyn, which has been reluctant to offer a long-term deal with the point guard. It does bear mentioning, Kevin, when we talked to Woj earlier in the show, he said that just because he opted in would not preclude the Nets from necessarily making a deal with someone else. Kyrie's averaged 27.1 points with the Nets in 3 seasons, second most in franchise history, behind only KD. That's despite the fact he hasn't even played in barely 50% of the games. Kyrie's 4 career 50-point games with the Nets are the most in franchise history. He scored a franchise record 60 points on March 15th against the Magic. Bobby Marks is in studio. He'll join us in just a minute for more on what this means. For now, Kyrie opting in to stay with the Nets for now. There are currently no known teams that are planning to pursue a sign and trade deal for the Nets guard, who's seeking a long-term deal that the Nets have just been hesitant about offering. Kyrie has until Wednesday to pick up his player option or become a free agent. You may remember on this very show just last week, guys, we told you that Kyrie gave the Nets leadership a list of teams that he would like them to consider on potential sign and trades. 6 teams are on it. The Lakers are on there, along with Nagandi's Sixers, the Knicks, the Heat, the Clippers, and the Mavs. None of them, however, would have the cap space to even sign Irving without a little help from Brooklyn. For much more, we bring in the aforementioned senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, what more can you tell us about the Lakers' interest in Kyrie Irving?
El, the Lakers are certainly among all teams in the NBA the most interested in trying to acquire Kyrie Irving. The difficulty is how they would acquire him. They'd like to do a sign and trade with the Brooklyn Nets, as would Kyrie Irving, where he would be able to negotiate an extension off of the $36 million that he has to opt into in Brooklyn. The expectation is that the Nets don't have an interest in taking back what the Lakers would be offering in that deal. That would be centered on Russell Westbrook and other assets. The easiest way for Kyrie Irving to get to the Lakers is to opt out of his contract before Wednesday at 5 p.m., and he could sign a $6 million taxpayer mid-level exception. That's all the Lakers have available to him. Now, that would be over a $30 million pay cut for this coming season. If Kyrie Irving opts back into his deal in Brooklyn, they could still trade him, but it wouldn't come with a contract extension elsewhere for Kyrie Irving. Of course, he could opt back into the deal and eventually negotiate a contract buyout. So there's still ways for he and the Nets to part. But, you know, there's about 48 hours now between now and when he's got to make a decision about how he wants to maneuver.
Well, I don't care how many games Kyrie Irving plays in. With that level of talent, $6 million would be an absolute steal for the Lakers. The subplot here has always been, what does the evolution of the relationship, right, between Kyrie and Nets, how does it affect KD? So what does this Lakers news mean for KD and his relationship with the Nets right now?
Well, I think even without the Lakers' interest in Kyrie Irving, the Nets have left themselves vulnerable to a Kevin Durant trade request because they've not acquiesced with Irving on a long-term contract. He's wanted to do a long-term deal with Brooklyn. They've not wanted to make that commitment to him, and it's left them vulnerable with Kevin Durant, who has 4 years left on his contract. There are teams all over the league lining up, waiting to see if Kevin Durant would be available. The Nets are certainly bracing for that possibility, but as of now, Kevin Durant has not expressed that to the Nets, and I think Kyrie Irving, he will dictate a lot of this with the decision he makes in the next 48 hours about whether he opts in Brooklyn, opts out, and then Kevin Durant certainly may react to that, and Brooklyn may be in a position where they could be looking to trade both players.
Unbelievable that after all of the years of putting this duo together, if you couple in James Harden, then KD and Kyrie, 58 games together, and as it looks right now, that might be it for their time in Brooklyn. Adrian Wojnarowski, it's never it for Woj. Woj hanging out and standing by with the latest developments in this story. Thanks, Woj.
Thanks, Al.
Being that it is such a big story, we've got much more on it. How Kyrie could affect KD's future with Brooklyn. Tony and Mike come back for our bonus segment with PTI. Still ahead, Kev, on SportsCenter.
Well, we're following the preseason favorites to start the year, the Brooklyn Nets, and it all fell apart When it ends like that, you start thinking about a whole year.
Still asking why.
I mean, I was out, Kev was out, James gets traded. It's just a culmination of things that happened throughout our year.
A lot of stuff that happened throughout the season that needed to go well in order for you to be a good team. And a lot of things didn't go our way.
The Nets were the only team to be swept in this year's playoffs, and with 3 seasons under their belts as teammates, KD and Kyrie have played just 58 games together. Brooklyn now facing a reality which not one but maybe both of its All-Stars will be on their way out this summer. For more, we send it over to Mike and Tony with today's BTI bonus segment.
All right, Wilbon, if Kyrie Irving leaves Brooklyn, what should Kevin Durant do?
Well, Tony, I don't know what he should do. I know what he can do and seems likely to do in the atmosphere in which we live now with the NBA. Stars can just determine. I know I just signed a 4-year deal. I'm under contract for 4 years. I want out. We've seen it time and again. We saw it with Ben Simmons. He had at least 3 more left. We've seen it with James Harden. We've seen this movie. So Kevin Durant can force his way out. Now, where would that be? He would not have total say with that. He does not have a no-trade clause in his contract. At least that's what I'm under the impression of. And so he'd have to be traded elsewhere, and maybe he gets a shot at a pretty decent team, or he can stay with the Brooklyn Nets, Tone, where he's got, a couple of players around him. Oh, he's got a guy named Ben Simmons who just forced his way out, and he's got Seth, not Steph Curry, Seth Curry. So he's got the beginnings of something. Is that good enough in the East to win? No. And so I don't know what Brooklyn could get back. What could Brooklyn get back, say, from the Lakers if they traded Kyrie to L.A.? Nothing, because the Lakers ain't got nothing that you would want if you're Brooklyn that would be tradable. So I don't know what he should do, but I know what he could do.
I think the first thing Kevin Durant should do is look in the mirror and ask himself the following question. I left Steph Curry for this guy? Really? I did that? I had the bird in hand and I took the 2 in the bush, and I may not get anything at all. Now, if he likes Brooklyn, if he likes living in the New York area and he likes playing there, then you can stay, because a lot of people are going to want to play with Kevin Durant. And if Ben Simmons is recovered from whatever injuries he has and whatever
All-star.
emotional circumstance he had, Ben Simmons can be an all-star. So there is talent there. I agree with you, he does not necessarily have to leave, but he's got to ask himself, what am I doing now?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? The last departure looks like bad judgment at this point. And, there's no blaming other people. I mean, that's what the biggest stars, it seems now, they like to do. Blame other people. God knows Kyrie's going to blame everybody else. But KD, there's no blaming. They didn't want him out of Golden State. He could have been there if he wanted. He wanted to go to Brooklyn. And so, you know what? Careful what you ask for. That's it. We're done. Back to you.